Morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning drive here with Phantom Sports. We're going to get ready for Week 6 in the NFL. Lots going on, tons of news going on. I'm your host, Adam Mancuda, as always. We're glad to have you here. Get your lineups ready for Week 6 in the NFL. Cannot believe we're already at Week 6 already. Season flies by, so we're here to get your lineup set this week, get you ready for your waiver wire priority list, some ad drops, some trade analysis, some guys to be high on, some guys to be low on, and for all you Alvin Kamara owners out there, do not panic. We have plenty of news to go around. So let's jump right in. A little analysis. We dropped a video last night to give some analysis on the news that Jay Ajayi is probably out for this season. We also mentioned that Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette likely out this week. So that's big opportunities from some of the running backs. But let's just dive in real quick off the top here with some top stories to kind of get your thoughts here. As always, we take your questions, your advice. We're all an interactive community here, so we're all out to help each other win our leagues, win some money. We've done really well on gambling picks the last couple weeks. I think my record was 15-7 over the last 3 weeks in the NFL with my featured picks, so that's a great start for the last 3 weeks. We've done really well on the college side as well. There's actually a game tonight that I actually have a lean on that you might want to tune in for later in the show as we kind of dive in. But as we know, as always, just dump your comments in if you're watching across the Phantom site, the Fantasy Football site, the Going for Two site, as also the All Sports page through the Fantasy Alliance guys. So thank you as always for your help. And as always, join the Fantasy Forum. There's plenty of interactive content throughout the week. We broke the news last night with Jay Ajayi and the analysis there, so you could hopefully go out and pick up Wendell Smollett or Corey Clement in your league. But for now, let's dive in as we wait for some questions to come in. Let's dive right into some of the big news. So obviously a historic night last night in New Orleans. Drew Brees sets the all-time passing yardage record with a beautiful touchdown pass to Traquan Smith. You know, one of the discussions last week during one of the DraftKings shows I appeared on was whether or not Drew Brees was going to go for over 200 yards and break the record. Well, he did so in the second quarter. I mean, obviously, Traquan Smith here was running wide open, but nice 60-yard touchdown pass. We've been telling you all season to get on the Traquan hype train because of his skill set coming out of Central Florida, the fact that he's got Drew Brees, as his quarterback. He's just a total weapon here, big play receiver. So congratulations to Drew Brees and the Saints. Great milestone for him to set the record on Monday Night Football in front of everyone, and especially in front of the home fans in New Orleans. You also have the Jaguars and Chiefs showdown. We're going to show you brief highlights of Brady last week here. Welcoming Edelman back. Big showcase game here, Sunday Night Football. Patriots and Chiefs. So that's a big one this week. We're also going to see, as we mentioned, two big injuries. Jay Ajayi and Matt Breida, two starting running backs, two starting caliber running backs in your league where you probably have them as your running back number 2. Now it's Wendell Smollett, Corey Clement, maybe Alfred Morris as well. That here you might have that opportunity to pick one of those guys up. So for me, it's one of those things where you see Breida here is a very explosive player out of Georgia Southern, had a great start to the season. He's been banged up a little bit. He's got that ankle injury. So for me, Alfred Morris is less of a pickup than Wendell Smollett or Corey Clement. To me, I actually like Corey Clement a lot more in PPR leagues than I would Smollett, but I think Smollett overall is the better back to own. So we'll go to the next story here. The rookies have some ups and downs. I know some fans out there love Sam Darnold. They love Josh Rosen. I mean, look at this throw by Josh Rosen to Christian Kirk on Sunday. They beat the 49ers. All 4 rookie quarterbacks got wins this week, which is just really remarkable to think about, where you got Rosen and Darnold and Allen and Mayfield all got wins this week. I mean, you have really solid performances here, all up and down the board from Rosen and the rookies. Again, you're going to have some ups and downs with them, but it's good to see that these guys are having some success early on. And then you got 2 elite teams really at this point. It's the Rams, it's the Chiefs. Todd Gurley put on another show this past week for all of us and the fantasy owners out there. 3 more touchdowns. The guy does it all. Out of the backfield, rushing the ball. Tough Seattle defense, but you know what? They put up over 30. They went for that crucial 4th and 1 late in the game that iced it with Jared Goff doing the sneak. So to me, the Rams are elite, and obviously the Chiefs, and they'll get their real test. They overcame a test on the road in Mile High. They overcame the test on Sunday against the Jaguars. And now they got the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. 3 straight weeks that team has to get up for a big game. Let's see how the Chiefs look on Sunday night. So obviously we're going to talk about some stock up guys, some stock down guys. We're going to jump right into the first question. Gee, what's going on? First question comes in. Why has Drew Brees gotten forgotten? I think the big thing is for Zach is this. You got guys that are winning tons of Super Bowls like Brady, or playing in tons of championship games like Roethlisberger. And Drew Brees has that 1 Super Bowl title, but really outside of that, he hasn't even gotten back to that NFC title game that much. Remember, last season they were that miracle play in Minnesota away from appearing in that NFC title game against the Eagles. So to me, he's put up all these amazing numbers, and in the fantasy community, we all love Drew Brees. But when you think about all-time greats, like he wasn't obviously a top pick. He wasn't a starter his entire career. You know, Doug Flutie was the starting quarterback in San Diego before he came on and took that job over. Then, if you remember, the story goes that Nick Saban was in Miami with the Dolphins, and he had a choice: Dante Culpepper or Drew Brees. Drew Brees had the banged-up shoulder. They decided to sign Dante Culpepper. We all know what happened to him. And then with that trickle-down effect, Drew Brees went to New Orleans. Now think about this. Imagine if Drew Brees was healthy, he went to Nick Saban, and Nick Saban got the real Drew Brees. What would happen to Nick Saban in his career? Would he have ever gone to Alabama? Would he have ever gone and become this immortal head coach in college football? We don't know, because we don't know what system Drew Brees would have been in, and I doubt he would have put up the numbers in Miami that he has in New Orleans. It's been the perfect marriage between coach and quarterback and city. Obviously, the Hurricane Katrina stuff, everyone, fell in love with Brees there. Very wholesome family guy. You saw that last night in the celebration. Brees is one of the all-time best. He's probably in the top 10. I don't think you could call him the greatest ever, despite setting the yards record, because it's a different age in which the quarterbacks are obviously playing. He will, obviously, I think next week, go over the 500 touchdown mark, which has only been done by 4 other guys. So Brees is a Hall of Famer, first ballot, no question. Sensational career for Drew Brees. As we mentioned, kind of continue to jump in with the questions here for setting your lineups, getting your waiver priorities in for the week. We're going to talk about all that throughout the show. We'll talk about some stock-up guys as we have listed here. G's got a question. What's the Vegas odds on Jason Garrett being fired? I really think that they should be high, and if they're not as high as they have been in years, they should be. What he did on the 4th down in overtime the other night was deplorable. You pay so much money to your offensive line. They just have not been supported by the talent on the offense, on the receiver position. Obviously, they have Zeke. But again, Dak Prescott failed to impress on Sunday night again. The defense let them down. A couple key plays there in overtime to get the Texans in field goal range. So for me, Jason Garrett, at this point, has to go. But Jerry Jones loves him. He doesn't want, as the reports came out last week, he doesn't want to go find a new coach at this point. Whether it's because he's got that comfort level with Garrett, whether Garrett's a puppet, whatever the reason, I just don't see it happening right now. Look, if the Cowboys falter off here and finish 4-12 or 5-11, I could see it happening. But right now, they're still in the mix in the NFC. So for me, especially in the NFC East, where the division's a complete mess with the Giants, up and down 1-4. The Redskins got their doors blown off last night by the Saints, and the Eagles, who have really struggled to start the season. So for me, right now, I don't see Garrett going anywhere until this team is out of it. But they need to turn around pretty quickly, in my opinion. So again, if you're on the fantasy football page, you're on the all sports page, you're on the Phantom page, keep dumping some questions in there. Love having everyone here. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in, some of the stock up guys, which we mentioned. Tre'Quan Smith, you saw his coming out party last night against the Redskins with a couple scores. We've been touting this guy since week 1. Any receiver that's in that Drew Brees system, he's got to get your attention. I think the same will be said for someone we'll talk about a little later in Marquise Valdez-Scantling in Green Bay. But for me, Tre'Quan Smith, with the Ted Ginn injury, he immediately stepped up into that number 2 spot. He's explosive, especially in games in New Orleans where Brees has that home field advantage, which is spectacular. Tre'Quan Smith's already now a flex play in my mind. You got Nyheim Hines. He showed you on Thursday Night Football what he's capable of. Same guy that did this at NC State during his college career. Caught balls out of the backfield. The Colts are going to be playing from behind all season long because their defense is just that bad. They're all banged up. And especially when Andrew Luck is down weapons on offense with Hilton potentially still out next week, Jack Doyle potentially out. You saw what they had. They really have Eric Ebron, who's a mediocre tight end at best, who now looks like the second coming of Rob Gronkowski, and Hines, who's the only really reliable receiver out of the backfield. So Hines is a really stock-up guy. Kenyon Drake, finally, they gave him some work. He got a bunch of receptions, so in PPR leagues, his value is coming back. Hopefully Adam Gase has realized that it's important to get your best running back on the field and not 105-year-old Frank Gore. David Njoku, I think, is developing that chemistry now with Baker Mayfield, who's chucking the ball all over the yard. Great to see that Baker is obviously developing. Huge win at home. I did not see that coming against Baltimore. I like Baltimore on the road. And look, it was the Baltimore offense that struggled more than their defense. But again, Mayfield threw for over 300 again. So maybe Njoku's ready for a big burst there. So the last 3 guys on the list, you got to remember Tariq Cohen and Cameron Brate, they were on byes last week. But remember something, O.J. Howard, the Bucs tight end, out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. So Brate steps in immediately to that opportunity to take over for all the receptions in Tampa from the tight end position. With how bad their defense is, they're going to be in a lot of shootout games and a lot of come from behind garbage time situations. So I actually love Brate as a tight end in this. The reason being, Look at all the injuries around the league at tight end. Evan Ingram, Greg Olsen, those guys might be back this week. They may not. Then you also have Delaney Walker and some of the other guys that are out for the season. So for me, Brate's a great pickup, and now with Jameis Winston back in the fold, that was one of his favorite targets over the last few years. So I like Brate a lot. And you have Tariq Cohen, who broke out a couple weeks ago again and overshadowed Jordan Howard in that thumping that the Bears put on the Bucs. So Cohen's a really great flex play PPR. He seems to be a trusted weapon for Mitch Trubisky. So certainly, he's someone that I would think to add. Geez, another question. What's the difference between a paying league and a non-paying league? I don't know what you mean in terms of non-playing PPR, unless you're asking about PPR, which is points per reception. Paying league versus non-paying league. To me, if you're talking about a paying league, I'm assuming you're talking about putting money at stake here in your fantasy league, but just get back to me and confirm that. As we keep going, tons of more questions coming in. One question coming in, Austin Eckler's on your list. How do you view him going forward? Look, I think the Chargers are also one of these teams that are going to play in shootouts. They've all year been touting Eckler as basically their next generation Danny Woodhead. And you know what he did for the Pats? Then he went to the Chargers. He had extreme success there. Then he was forced to retire. I see Eckler in much the same mold. He's going to get his 5 to 6 carries, get you a handful of yards, catch 3-4 passes out of the backfield, and then occasionally break one like he did on Sunday for a 44-yard touchdown. So I think the Chargers are going to use him. I love him in PPR formats. I wouldn't go crazy for him. If he's on the waiver wire, you grab him. I certainly think he's someone to pick up there and enjoy the ride. I think he's a really good guy to have on your team. So let's go now to a little don't believe the hype on a few of these guys that had nice performances in week 5. The first one is David Moore, and again, I had to look this guy up. I'm a fantasy nut. I'm a college football guy. I had no idea who this guy was. But he scored a couple touchdowns for the Seahawks. Look, I just don't see it as something that's sustainable. Much was the same with this guy, Will Dissly, their tight end at the beginning of the year. He scored a few touchdowns. I just don't see David Moore as someone you want to go crazy about. You want to put him as your last guy on your bench. Hope that it continues. Maybe it's a trend. Fine. But Doug Baldwin, who I think only had one catch this week, is not going to be limited to that all season long. So to me, David Moore is someone you could keep on your bench. So PPR. The difference between a PPR league and a non-PPR league. The receiver position or the running back position gets points every time that there's a reception. So let's say I'm going to throw the ball to you. You catch it, you get a point. 1 point for the reception or half a point for the reception. In some leagues, the actual catch itself, the action of catching it does not result in a point, just the yardage that goes associated with it. So that's the difference there. PPR leagues are leagues that I like to play in because it rewards the running backs who catch the ball out of the backfield. It rewards the guys like Edelman or possession receiver type guys that get open, get the catches, don't get the big yardage that a guy like DeAndre Hopkins or Antonio Brown would get. So for me, that's the reason I do PPR leagues. Some people make it a half point, so it's not too valuable, but I think it just evens out the value of all the receivers on the board. And if you've got an elite receiver, those are going to count as 6 points or 4 points in whatever format you have. So for me, that's the difference there. Some other guys on the do not believe the hype. Well, Garrett Blount. Look, Kerryon Johnson has been really, really good the last 3 weeks. Blount had a couple of short touchdown runs this past weekend. I'm not high on him at all. He's nothing more than a last guy on my bench or maybe at best a flex play in a week where your running backs are on a bye. Trent Taylor had a lot of garbage time stats, including a touchdown for the 49ers. Pierre Garçon's not getting any younger. They got to give someone run. And as much as Taylor, I think, will get that run, I just don't trust this 49ers offense year long. So to me, Taylor's not someone you go crazy for. Eli Manning, look, they've put up 30 points for the first time in 5-6 years, maybe since the Roosevelt administration. But for me, Eli's just not someone you could trust week in and week out. Remember, 7 of those points of going over the 30 to 31 resulted from a touchdown pass from Odell Beckham Jr. to Barkley. So let's already temper that back a little bit in terms of Eli's performance. He looked good against the Panthers. He has the weapons. If they're going to rectify the offensive line situation, okay, maybe, but let's revisit that in a few weeks. CJ Beathard, another 49er, just don't trust them. Robbie Anderson finally woke up for Zach and his Jets. This week he had that touchdown catch in week 1. He's been very limited in terms of production the first 4 weeks. I just wouldn't go crazy. Denver was completely overmatched against the Jets. I don't see the Jets scoring 30 again for the next few weeks. So to go crazy about Anderson, you want to add him as one of your fill-in receivers for bye weeks? Fine. I just wouldn't go crazy and play him every week. And then Latavius Murray. This guy's had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to prove that he can still play in this league with Dalvin Cook banged up. He did it 3 weeks ago. They bombed against Buffalo. Dalvin Cook came back last week, didn't look like himself in that loss to the Rams. Murray bombed again. Now he bombs a third week in a row. To me, you cut bait with Latavius Murray. There's someone better on this bench that you could put there. Ronald Jones is a name I like that I had mentioned earlier. He's going to probably be starting now for the Bucs moving forward, the rookie out of USC. So I really like him moving forward. So if you have more questions, keep them coming in. We're here till 10 o'clock as always on the morning drive. Tons of content throughout the week. We got tons of waiver wire. We have a waiver wire video out. So if you guys are interested in who to add, who to drop, tons of questions should be coming in soon now. In terms of trade advice, there's tons of that going on this week. It's a very big week in your fantasy football league because at this point, you're 5 weeks through. You're either 1-4 and basically playing for next year. If you're in a keeper league, of course, and then if you're 2-3, 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, you're already looking to take that next step and make those moves to solidify your team moving forward. So anyone out there on the Football Alliance page, certainly dump some questions in here. Another question has come in. Taysom Hill, the guy on the Saints last night, stole the touchdown from Kamara. What are your thoughts? So it's very interesting. I think for us at this point with Alvin Kamara, remember this. Mark Ingram, they wanted to get him established into the game right away last night for the Saints. They were obviously trying to get Drew Brees' record. They wanted to get Ingram more involved. If you're an Alvin Kamara owner, you drafted him this year because of what he did last year, and that was with Mark Ingram in the lineup. Just because he's back does not mean Kamara's going to fall off a cliff. So for me, when you have these two talented running backs, last night was more about Brees and establishing Ingram. So if you are a Kamara owner, I would stand pat. This guy is electric. You see what he can do, whether it's out of the backfield with over 10 catches in games, whether it was last week against the Giants where he went well over 100 yards with 3 touchdowns. The guy can do it all. So for me, stay the course. If your Kamara owner in your league is getting desperate and gets worried, pounce. Because look, next week, the week after, they're going to play some of these defenses that are just not that good. They play in the division with the Bucs. They play in the division with the Falcons. Those are not good defenses. The Giants just put up 30 against the Panthers. So they're going to have these divisional matchups where I see the Saints going over 25, 30 points week in and week out. You're also going to see the emergence of Tre'Quan Smith now. So for me, it's going to open things up. More running lanes for Kamara. More coverage will swing towards Cam Meredith, who had a nice game last night, and Tre'Quan Smith. So if you're a Kamara owner, be patient. You just don't go crazy over one bad week where he obviously wasn't the focal point of the game plan. They want to reestablish Ingram. So now the next game and the game after that, people are like, oh yeah, Mark Ingram. We got a game plan for him too. So they established that in people's minds, and now moving forward, I think they'll be fine. Some other news and notes from the league. Jamal Charles, interesting. The ex-Chief, ex-Bronco is working out for the Jaguars today. Interesting piece of news simply because of Fournette, who they're likely to miss this week again. TJ Yeldon was very solid in their win against the Chiefs. So for me, this is interesting because that tells me Fournette's not healthy, and he probably won't be for some time. So especially if they're going down the line. But here we go. There's some big news here. I'm trying to pull this up. Adrian Peterson, the running back, who we talked about on Sunday as someone that you're going to want to bench in all of your leagues because of the matchup, which, again, he bombed last night, so we hit that one. Suffered a dislocated shoulder in Monday night's game. He'll have an MRI today. He's not worried. It's not going to keep me out. Really, Adrian Peterson? You're 36 years old, and you have a separated shoulder, dislocated shoulder. You're not going to miss any time. Red flags for me. Stock up for Chris Thompson for me. That's a huge piece of news because people like Peterson. I thought the matchup last night was a terrible one for him, but I thought given the way the Redskins were playing this season, a lot of close games as Alex Smith's their quarterback, not a lot of shootouts, that Peterson would actually have some value. But if I'm an Adrian Peterson owner, you're going to look for a backup today because that's just some terrible news. But this is, again, maybe why Capri Bibbs got those fourth quarter carries last night. And I don't think Bibbs is the answer long term. They're going to probably go looking for a running back. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Maybe Le'Veon Bell. That's interesting. The Redskins always like to make a splash. Why not Le'Veon Bell if they could keep it in there? Sean McVay, a couple pieces of news here from the Rams receivers. Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks both in concussion protocol. Look, this is a tricky injury where most times when people have a concussion, they're out a week at the minimum. If you are a Rams owner of Cooper Kupp or Brandon Cooks, pick up Josh Reynolds this week. He's a great option. He's going to be, potentially, the fill in there for me. And I'm just looking through some other things. as well. I think Marquise Valdez-Scantling's a great ad, the guy in the Packers. With Cobb and Allison out last week, he went off 7 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. As I mentioned, you have the options as well with Traquan Smith and Cam Meredith for the Saints, who both showed up last night and played really well. So the Arrow got a ton of guys on the waiver wire from wide receiver position. You got Christian Kirk, you have Kike Kutea, the Texans, who scored in each of the last 2 weeks. Those guys are options. Trent Taylor for the 49ers. But if you have one of these Rams receivers, be very careful about that. Just seen Antonio Brown on TMZ for almost killing a child. I don't even know how to respond to that, G. We'll look into that after the show. I don't see it anywhere here on my little news feed that I have, but that's interesting. We'll look into that. But if that's, I don't even want to comment on that. That's a can of worms I don't want to open right now. Where do you store all this info? Great question, G. Right here. I don't have much else going on. But no, it's all for the love of the game. I think anything that you're really passionate about, you research, you read about, you watch videos, but it's great. It's fun. We're all interactive here. I wish we had some more questions coming in. We should continue to see some as we kind of flow in here. Maurice Harris, this Redskins receiver, went 3 for 47 last night in a start. Because Paul Richardson was out, then I would stay away. I don't think there's anything there. Oh, sorry, Josh Doxson was out last night. Cam Meredith, 5 for 71 last night, just to recap some of that Monday Night Football game. He did have a crucial fumble, though, late in the second quarter that led to a Redskins touchdown. So, again, I like Meredith. Him and Traquan Smith played well, especially Smith. But again, Ted Ginn Jr., how long is that injury? So we'll see how impactful that is. Chris Thompson also got hurt last night. It said had to leave the game late in the fourth quarter with a rib injury. Okay, so, I mean, they're playing the Panthers next. That's a tough matchup. So they're at home. That makes it a little bit better. I think they are like a 6-point favorite. They were at least as of early afternoon yesterday. But for me, I'm going to stay away right now from that Redskins backfield. Peterson's banged up. Bibbs is not an option. He was good in college at Colorado State, but he's not a great pro. And Thompson's they're more their PPR back, which he had a lot of value last night, where he caught 6 of 8 passes, targets to him for 45 yards. So keep every time I watch, I try and write everything down. Gee, you don't have to write everything down. You could rewatch the video like 1,000 times, and then you're good to go. You just watch it, give us more views, and you just do it that way. Continue to have the questions come in. We have about 7 or 8 more minutes here on the morning drive. Tons of lineup questions, waiver priorities. We'll go through a little bit more here. I'll get you ready here. What do we got here? So we got some analysis. We'll go through some betting lines real quick. We always want to touch on that. So these are some of the early lines. Pulled these yesterday. Obviously, they're going to adjust as the week goes on. New England, 3.5-point favorite over the Chiefs. That's how much respect they have for the Pats. I don't know if that number's too high. We'll talk more about this game later in the week. I actually think the Patriots win this game. Homer bias aside, I just don't like Mahomes on the road, 3rd game in a row where they have to get really up for that game. Pats have redemption on their mind from the opener last year. And for me, Belichick has 3 extra days now to get his team healthy and get his team prepared as they played last Thursday night. The Chiefs played Sunday. So, interesting one in Foxborough Sunday night as well. Giants, must-win game. If they have any shot this week on Thursday night, they got to go into Philly and win. They are a 3-point underdog. They might be at home, but we'll check that. Bears, 3-point favorites on the road at Miami. This is a must-win for Miami if they have any hope. They were 3-0. They were riding high. They were talking a good game, and then got blown out by the Pats. They had a big lead in the fourth quarter. Then got blown out by the Bengals. Really ugly fourth quarter for the Dolphins. I actually like the Bears in this one with Mitch Trubisky. Looks like he's coming into his own. You then have the Panthers, as I just mentioned, 6-point underdog on the road in Washington. If the Washington team is banged up as much as they are, and it looks like they are, give me the Panthers in that one. I think I like what I've seen now from Cam Newton using McCaffrey. Maybe Greg Olson's back as well. We also have Cincinnati at home, 2.5-point favorite to Pittsburgh. Look, Pittsburgh, for as well as they played against the Falcons, their defense is still terrible. The Bengals have exploded each and every week. Last week, they didn't play as well against Miami, but they still won that game by 10 points. I like Andy Dalton. I like Tyler Boyd. I love A.J. Green, obviously. Joe Mixon's back. I think they take this game by 6 or 7 points. And then the Rams at Denver. Interesting game because you got the Rams off their road win at Seattle, now traveling to Mile High to take on the Broncos team that is completely different from that team that started 2-0 through the first 2 weeks of the season. Keenum threw a couple touchdown passes, but they got their doors blown off again. He's just not a capable playoff year in and year out quarterback. He had a great team around him in Minnesota last year with an amazing defense and amazing weapons. This year, it's just not the same case. Yes, Demaryius Thomas found the end zone against the Jets. It was garbage time. Who cares? So for me, I like the Rams again. Then we got some college games. The one that jumps out here on the first line, App State and Arkansas State. Tuesday night special. There is football on tonight. So if you guys are bored about the Yankees and Red Sox out there, tune in. App State. They got a very talented running back, Jalen Moore. They also have a very talented defense that has shut teams down all season. I think they go into Arkansas State and win this game by double digits. So that's just a game I put on there as a little gambler special for you tonight. Other games this week. Florida favored against Vanderbilt. Hold on, G. Who you got? Dallas and Jags. Is that a real question? G. Dallas or the Jags? The Dallas Cowboys can't score against the Texans. I don't see them scoring against the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars will do enough. I like Yeldon, actually, in this matchup, being able to take advantage of his speed on the outside. I think Bortles will take advantage of the Cowboys, much like Watson did. I think they're going to bounce back here. The Jaguars are one of these teams where they're going to play down to their better competition. The Titans have a really good defense. They lost and tried to have a shootout with the Chiefs. I think that they'll beat the teams that they should beat, and that's the Cowboys. So, quick bet there for you. G. Other games, Washington on the road at Oregon. Very interesting game. Huge game in the Pac-12. Washington, again, their only hope, I think, for the Pac-10 to Pac-12 to get a team in the playoffs is Washington. They need to win out. So they need a very impressive performance at Oregon. UCF at Memphis. Again, UCF is 10th in the country, undefeated again. They got a Heisman potential guy in Mackenzie Milton, although Tua at this point is the clear favorite, and then Haskins, the guy from Ohio State's number 2 for me. But Milton, again, they haven't lost in 2 years, so let's see if that can continue at Memphis. You have Texas off that huge win against Oklahoma, huge upset. Now they get Baylor at home. I think that's an easy win for Texas. You got Georgia and LSU in a huge game in the SEC. If LSU has any hopes of reaching their conference title game, they need to win this one. Georgia, if they have any hopes at the playoffs and potentially having 2 teams in the playoff from the SEC, they need to win this game convincingly. And then you got Michigan and Wisconsin Saturday night in the Big House. Michigan, very good offensively last week, put up a bunch of points against Maryland. Wisconsin, shaky defensively, which is a surprise this year. They do have Jonathan Taylor, who's a dynamic running back. It'll be very hard for him and Higdon, the running back for Michigan, to get anything going. So I expect a low-scoring affair in this one, somewhere around 2017, 24-20. Have not yet made the pick yet. Very interested to see how things go. Frank, how are you, buddy? Toss some questions in here. We have a couple minutes. If we have more questions coming in, I will certainly answer them over the next few minutes. I have no problem staying on for the 15 or so minutes if we have the questions. G, thank you for the comment. Glad to help, and we'll certainly talk to you later in the week. Frank and anyone else out there in the universe, the Phantom universe or the fantasy football universe, certainly drop me a line, and we'll answer your questions here in real time. Some of the guys and for Frank, I'll kind of jump in real quick here. Some of the stock up guys that I wanted to talk about, and then make sure you guys can add to your team this week. Kike Kute, the guy scored 2 weeks in a row for the Texans. Will Fuller was healthy last weekend. He did play. So for me, the fact that Kike scored again on a 1-yard little shovel pass is impressive. I think that says a lot about where they view him in their offense. So he's another one. Nyheim Hines, great PPR addition. You see that the Colts are going to be playing from behind much of the season. So for me, Hines is a great addition. Cameron Brate, serious weapon for me now for the Bucs. Tight end position has been decimated by injuries all year. Delaney Walker, he's out. Greg Olson's banged up. Evan Ingram's banged up. O.J. Howard, Tyler Eifert. For me, so Brate, with the chemistry he has already with Jameis Winston, huge opportunity to make a mark for the Bucs in games that they probably will be playing from behind, especially this week against Atlanta. You got Austin Eckler, who scored again. You have Kenyon Drake, who finally Adam Gase gave the rock to this week, especially out of the backfield. So if Drake's owners are out there and you want to potentially grab him, I wouldn't be opposed to that. You also got Tariq Cohen. Remember, off that bye for the Bears, he was great in that blowout win against the Bucs. So if he's available, he's a great flex play for me. If anything ever happened to Jordan Howard, you see his stock up. I think actually he'll get more touches now with Anthony Miller out for the Bears. And then if anything obviously ever happened to a guy like Burton or Allen Robinson or Gabriel especially, Cohen would even get more of that share of targets. So we are going to wrap up here in a minute. We do appreciate everyone joining us today. A lot more to come throughout the week. Continue to check the Phantom Fantasy Football page as well as the Phantom site for any breaking news. We'll give you some game previews, some gambling picks throughout the week. Obviously, we will get ready for Sunday in the All Out Blitz show, which will come your way, as always, 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday morning. For Adam Yakuda and the Phantom team, have a great week, and we'll talk to you during the week.